Good evening, everyone, and welcome to week 6 of Parenting Beyond the Rules. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and thank you for being with us these last 5, now 6 weeks. Connie, I cannot believe we're at the final week.
I can't either. Here we are. We've covered so much territory, and we're going to wrap it up tonight.
Yes, and we're so excited to wrap it up. And we are just so blessed to have Connie with us again, and just say a prayer for her because she has just come off of how many weeks of speaking, traveling and speaking, and had a little bout with laryngitis. So anyway, but she is so faithful. So thank you for being with us tonight. And we are thrilled to thank you.
Well, I hope I don't sound too bad. It's a little raspy, but we're good.
We
God
are
is
good.
We've
Yes,
been praying
He is.
all day.
Yes.
Give me enough voice for an hour. That's all I'm asking.
And He is so faithful. So please join us in prayer before we get started. Father God, we do come before you. We thank you for your faithfulness. We thank you for your goodness. We just thank you for this time, Lord. Lord, we thank you for Connie and just her obedience and sharing the wisdom that you've imparted to her, to all of those who are listening and to all those who will listen in the future with this Parenting Beyond the Rules. And Lord, we pray for every person who's tuned in to us tonight. Lord, just we pray for a special blessing upon them and that they would walk away blessed, encouraged, and equipped with new information and with more wisdom in their parenting journey. And it's for all your glory, praise, and honor in Jesus' name. Amen. So this is our final week. We have gone through this book, and now we are going to cover chapters 11 and 12. Chapter 11, you talk about staying engaged. You've talked so much about, I know the last 2 weeks we covered a lot of meat with parents and just so much important information. And this week we'll be tying it up. But you talk about staying engaged, and there are 2 questions that you really encourage parents to ask. What does my teen need from me? And what does my teen need me to be, meaning the parent? And then what does my teen need from me? So Connie, just share a little bit about that, and if you would expand on each one of those.
You know, it's interesting, as we were preparing for this, and I was really thinking about our day today, and here we're coming to the end, and the voice is a little weak, and I'm trying to push out and push through, and I thought, how fitting, this is our last week. Because sometimes when we are going through all the trials and the struggles and the joys of raising children and raising teenagers, we can get to a point and we just want to, I'm done. I can't go anymore. I can't do anymore. And I thought about that as we were getting ready to talk. But our children need us to stay engaged. We need to keep pushing through. Our children need us to be strong, and they need us to be sturdy. And I'll give an analogy about that in a minute, about a tree, but they need you to be strong and sturdy. That is something, because their lives are being tossed around. What's right, what's wrong? We've talked about this so much. And then they also need they literally need, because they're growing up, they need freedom and space. And the challenge is, okay, well, if we're strong and sturdy and they need freedom and space, how does that work? Well, that's the challenge. And so I love to give this visual, and I would tell my children about it. Strong and sturdy, I want you to think about a tree. Wherever you're coming to us from, whatever state or city, there's trees. And I want you to think about the structure of a tree, and that you've got the branches and the leaves. You know, the leaves take in nutrients and they're attached to the branches. And then the branches are attached to the trunk, and the trunk has roots and it goes into the ground. Every part of that tree is vital to the health and protection of a family. So when you see a tree out in the field, let's say, I would tell my children, you know, a tree supplies safety, protection from the wind, from the heat, from the storms. And so when we think about our children being strong and sturdy, our branches, our tree, the trunk and the roots have to be strong, because our children will take refuge and gain shelter and protection from the elements. Some kids, some birds, They want to fly out in the storm. And they get blown around, and sometimes they can get hurt and harmed. And they willingly go out from under the protection of a tree. And that's the wise child will seek that protection. They'll realize that branch is something I can hold on to when the strong winds blow. And those leaves are something that will provide shelter from the squelching heat or the snow. Well, not really snow because the leaves fall, but the branches will hold. But that branch being you, the trunk being you, your roots are the most vital part of the tree. Because when the strong winds come, and we live in Florida, so we get strong winds. And as a matter of fact, in our home, in the last few years, we've lost over 20 trees. And we will sit in our house and we'll just wait for it. You can tell it's kind of going like this. If the roots get soggy, or if they're not rooted deeply, the whole tree goes over. Yeah. And I want us to think about, as a parent, we want to have that root system. Well, that root system represents our faith and our belief and our trust in the Lord, that we're grounded, we're deeply planted into the soil. We know God's word. We believe his promises, what he has for our kids, what he has for our family, so that when you and your family is blown through trials of life, your tree won't go down. It'll be strong. And the freedom is, you can't make your children. They want freedom. Sometimes they'll go for that freedom, and then they pay a price, and they come back, and they think, okay, there's safety here. So it's the tree providing shelter and safety. And it's us saying, we're here. We're not going anywhere. We're not going to quit. We're not going to walk away. We're not giving up on you. We love you. No matter what. We'll give you a little more space. Some kids, the more you give, the more they want. Give them an inch, they take a mile. Yeah. That is some kids. That's not all. Right. And that we have to remember, Carla, this is a season. That's all it is. It's a season where your child is moving from a child to an adult. And it's this phase of adolescence that can be tumultuous at times, but it can be peaceful at times. And you can have one child or two that things are going great with. And then you can have one or two and things are a little rough with. I want you to think about a river. And you remember that story in the book?
Yes. Yes.
God sees the river. He sees the twists and turns. We don't see. All we see is like what's right in front of us. Calm water or choppy, rough. We can't see what's around the bend, but God does. And so we hold on for dear life. We hold on to each other because we give them that picture that we're a family. We are going to do life together no matter what. Whether the river is going smoothly, which we celebrate and we're grateful for, or whether the waters are choppy and they're full of rocks and the boat that you're on might hit some. And some of your kids might not figuratively, but kind of literally, figuratively, not literally get knocked out of the water. And you bring them back in, you're like, oh, no. We're going to get back together. We're going to get back together. We're going to get through this path, this patch of rough water together. But that's what we need to be for our kids. And that's what our kids need from us. And with the Lord, it is possible for this amazing dynamic of growth and change in your child's life and in your life. It happens. And you're able to look back one day and just see, oh my, look what God has done.
I love those visuals that you just shared with the tree and the river, and just how exciting it is with parents as they are walking with their teen. And you have used this example in the past about the canvas and the paintbrush and that sort of thing. And so as parents are continuing to do that, and then as they get on the other side, so they may have experienced tumultuous waters, choppy waters, but on the other side around the bend is the calm waters. And then look at what that young person has now become, the adult, and grown into something, become something that oftentimes may be surprising to the parent or may not be surprising. Like, I knew you could do it all along, that sort of thing. But it is important. And I want to go back to your comment about there might be times where your teen doesn't make a wise choice and maybe gets out from under that storm. But when they come back, just having the conversation that needs to be had, but in a loving way, and not turning your back, and just still, forgiving them, but welcoming the teenager back. It's so important that they know.
Well, that goes back to one of our sessions, Carla, where we have to listen to learn, ask the right questions, and monitor the words that come out of our mouth. Kids right now with technology are led to believe they are the center of their universe. Everything revolves around them. And they can really believe that. And when that starts to happen, it can wreak havoc in your family. And that's why I love to give visuals. As I was flying back, you mentioned, yes, I've been on the road a lot, speaking a lot. And sometimes, with all the changes of climate and environment, I have what happened now. I've got a little laryngitis. But as I was flying, it was a 6 a.m. flight. And we were taking off. And as we got, before we, reached above the clouds, I saw this river and the sun was rising. And I thought, that is a perfect picture of parenting. The sun rises every day. God's mercies are new every single day. And I was looking down at this river that we were passing because we were up in the Tennessee mountain area. And so it was just this perfect illustration. I'm in an airplane and I'm looking down and I'm seeing the winding twists and turns of this river. And I thought to myself, that's what God sees. He knows where your family's going. He knows the plans that he has. And you may be thinking, if you're in a season of, say, crisis or chaos, well, I'm certain he's not very pleased with where our family is right now. Well, I'm going to say God delights in your effort and in your intentionality and in your being and you persevering through the storms of life. God delights in you. And I want you to hear that. God delights. We think that it's only the grand things, but it's the daily working through the issues of life with these potential leaders, with the child that's struggling or the child that's thriving. God delights in a parent that's present. And we have to remember that. He delights in that.
Yeah. You go on and talk about what your teen needs, what each and every teen needs from their parents, and you list 4 different things. One of which is protection. You talk about protection from peer groups and hidden dangers. And as we know today, the hidden dangers that are out there that oftentimes parents don't know about. And of course, a lot of the times the teens don't even know. And something just may happen. And then all of a sudden they're in a situation. Share a little bit about that, if you would. I know you shared a little bit with me before we started about a story, but share a little bit and expand on that, if you would.
Well, we have to remember 1 Corinthians 15:33. Bad company corrupts good morals. So when you're telling your children, I don't think you should hang out with them, tell them why they shouldn't. What do you see? Don't lecture them, because, the 4 things you were talking about was protection, responsibility, availability, and awareness. But the hidden dangers your kids can't see. I was speaking at a conference, and it usually brings in people in social media, technology. And so this particular topic, I usually get a lot of men because they're IT savvy. And I usually get a lot of teens because they want to learn how to use different technology devices. And I had gotten to the end of my presentation, and I told you, Carla, one of the men was an IT person. I mean, that's just what he did. He's like, kids aren't getting around their dad. I know all the tricks. And I'm like, yes, you do. But if they're at their cousin's house or grandma's house or on the basketball team or in the, the locker room, or they're in a class between classes, you're not there. And you don't know where they're going and what they're doing, even if you have all these things on their phone. The goal is to not have things on lockdown. The goal is to have our kids know what to do. And so in this class, Carla, there was a young girl with her younger brother and sibling, her 2 siblings next to her. And most of them were all parents with some of their kids. So they wanted to sit up front. And I thought, well, that's great. You want to learn. And when I talk about the hidden dangers, and I say our kids need us to be a protection. They need us to be that strong, sturdy tree that protects them. They don't always appreciate it and like it. This is where we have to explain why. So at the very end, I asked them, do you have any questions? And this young person raised their hand and said, I have a question. This person was being in communication with someone of an opposite sex. And I asked more specific questions, so I'm going to be careful how I share the story. But they were being asked questions, and they were grooming this young girl. And I didn't know how old she was. And I said, well, what's going on? And she just kind of whispered what this person was doing. And I just protected her and covered my mic. And I looked at all those parents, and I want to look straight at you. This was a 11-year-old little girl who probably knew she clicked on some things she shouldn't have, or she maybe befriended some people she shouldn't have, or maybe she didn't know. Maybe she was just curious, clicking around. These kids just click around. And I looked at all of them and I said, don't think it can't happen to your family. And I looked at this young girl and I said, have you told your parents? And she said, no. And I could just see all the parents' mouths just kind of drop, because at that moment, they could picture their child. You could picture your child in a room of complete strangers, telling a complete stranger, this is happening. I don't know what to do. I'm scared, but I can't tell my parents. And I told the crowd, when your kids get into some things, only 1 out of 10 kids will tell their parents. That means 9 aren't. They're not telling you when they're in trouble or afraid, or they've gone places they shouldn't have gone, or maybe they thought, I wanted freedom, and they find themselves in trouble because maybe they got mixed with the wrong crowd, or maybe they got, put up to do something to fit in with another crowd. And so, Carla, I just stopped and I said, you need to tell your parents. Why haven't you? And her response was, I'm afraid. I'm afraid. All of you that are listening now and in the future, that's not going to change. The only way it will change is if your child knows that even if they disobeyed and they went in places on apps, chat rooms, no matter what, that if they get themselves into trouble or they get scared, and this young person is in trouble, there's reason for her to be in trouble. She's reason to be afraid. And so you need to know, they will come to you. They went to 9 other people. They need help, and they'll ask of total strangers, let it be you. So they need that protection. They need that responsibility that you're going to be responsible and show up. Let's go back to those 4 points. Your kids need to know that if they confide in you, they can trust you. That you're going to respect them. You're not going to bring it up 100 times like leftovers out of the refrigerator that go bad. That you are going to be reliable. You're going to protect them. You're going to make sure you're doing what you need to do to keep the tree healthy, to remain strong, which means you got to take care of yourself. You can't let yourself go. You got to make sure you're sleeping well. You got to make sure that you're getting proper nutrition. You need to make sure that you're feeding your mind with things that are good and right and lovely, with things that are edifying, with things that when your kids come in to see, you don't have to click something off or turn it off, that they could walk in and you wouldn't be ashamed or feel guilty about something. Because, Carla, we're modeling for these kids. And that's how, when we give them freedom in their mind, they know what they should be doing. But sometimes, natural curiosity, they're just Googling something and then all of a sudden their eyes pop out because all they did was type in a word. Well, words have been hijacked and endings have been hijacked. So that's why I stress there are hidden dangers, and our children don't know them because they're not fully formed and developed. And they also believe it's never going to happen to me. I'm smart enough, and your kids are smart. They don't always know how to get out of it when they get into something that they shouldn't.
I'm shocked at this statistic, 1 in 10.
1 in 10.
Of the children that do not say anything because of fear or what have you. What are, so, other than staying engaged in providing a safe place, what are some other things that parents can do to ensure, and as society as a whole, but you look at all the parents, what are some other things that parents can do specifically to help encourage their kids?
Yes. Well, it took me a while to learn this, but lecturing doesn't work well. Yeah. But we have to explain. And there's some points, so if you are listening, write these things down, but they are in the book. Don't be predictable. Change things up. Your children already know what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. So change it up. Look for ways you can say yes instead of always saying no. Understand that teenagers and tweens, they have a short attention span. Their mind's thinking of a lot of different things. So while you're sitting there going, nah, 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 they're thinking about how many text messages they've got, who they need to call back, who's waiting to go play a game with them, who they need to chat with about this and that. So their mind, they have a short attention span. Get to your point. Make your point stick. Learn to balance your time and be available as much as possible. Doesn't mean you have to be constantly available. That's not realistic. And when I was saying don't be predictable, do things differently. If you want to have a talk, go have a talk somewhere different. Go canoeing or go for a hike or do something a little different, or make movie night on a different night, or conversations happen over a board game. Look for ways that you can change it up and make it fun. I closed the Parenting Beyond the Rules book with celebrate the teen years. The teen years are not something to survive. Sometimes it seems like that. They're really something that we can thrive, and we'll cover that a little bit more. But I began our conversation tonight using word pictures. I gave you a visual of a tree. You'll look at a tree now, and you'll notice the birds resting or the nest. You'll notice if a tree's starting to lean, or if the tree looks kind of sickly. So I'm going to encourage you, do an evaluation, become an arborist. Evaluate, how are you doing? How's your health? Are you strong and sturdy for your kids? I gave him an analogy of the river. I want you to think about how God views the river. He sees it all. It's not surprising. It's not, whoops, they're going to go in a bad spot here in a minute. He knows it's coming. Right. When it's smooth and rough, enjoy and we talked about creating defining moments. Make those. When the rough seasons come, you're already going to have defining moments. There'll be things you look back on as learning opportunities, and you'll realize how God made you stronger and hopefully not weaker, but don't let them break you.
And I think when the kids see that the parents are strong, that just strengthens them too. It strengthens the trust, it strengthens the bond, and just helps them grow closer to each other. It strengthens
we're
that
modeling.
bond between,
And we forget that. Yeah. Our actions. I write about this in the book. You're sitting here and you're telling your child to go to bed, go to bed, go to bed, but yet they watch you stay up till 1, 2, 3 in the morning because you're trying to get something finished for work, or maybe it's a project helping one of your other children. And then you get up at 5 or 6 and you're in the morning, or 6 or 7, whenever you have to get up, and you're crabby and you're short with them. And they're like, Mom, I didn't do anything. Dad, why are you yelling at me? And you realize you're tired. And then when they are up till 1 or 2 trying to get a project finished because maybe they dawdled, or maybe they're procrastinators. Some of your children, they like last minute preparations. And you're trying to teach them to be responsible. And so what you end up doing is now you're telling them you need to be planning ahead. You need to be better at managing your time. And in their mind, they're thinking, didn't I just see you do this yesterday? Yeah. So to your point, all aspects of our life, and this is not meant to frighten us or to make us lose hope, but it's really to encourage us that all manner of life is being played out before our children. And I'm getting ready to become a grandmother. And when I was speaking this the last few weeks, and I was talking about how excited I am to see my kids enter that realm of parenting, and how nerve-wracking it is at the same time, because I know all the hidden dangers. I want to be able to say, here, read my book. I want to be able to say, oh, I wish you could know what I know, but you can't know what you know. You can't know what you don't know. But God knows what's ahead. And God will help lead and guide you as you navigate treacherous, uncharted territory. But you can't be surprised. But you do need to model, because they're watching us. They're not going to do everything. Right. How many of us have said, oh, I'm never going to do what my mother did? And then, 5 years down the road, when they get mad at themselves because they'll repeat something and it sounds just like their mother. And they're like, oh, we've shaped and formed and molded our children. And they then go out and they become parents to our grandkids. And now we're in a different role. We're teaching them when they're little, and then we move to training and guiding and coaching to cheerleading. And now we're going to be supporting, and you'll be there. You'll be there in a matter of time, God willing, because children are a gift and a blessing. They're not something to put up with and deal with. And that's the mindset we want to have.
They're a heritage of the Lord.
Yeah.
They're a heritage of the Lord. It's very exciting. You're going to be a grandmother, Connie. I know you've been talking about that.
Probably every week, haven't I?
Is it due what, in a week? Due in a week or 2 weeks within the next week or two? Yeah. So congratulations. Last chapter, uniquely created, reminds me of the verse, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. I knew you in your mother's womb. And you talk a little bit about personality versus character. And you talk about what the personality is, what the character is, and how the parents, you are the primary person who can affect the character of your teenager. So talk a little bit about each one of those and the differences, and expand on that if you would.
So if you stop and thought about that little baby or the toddler, and how you've noticed idiosyncrasies of them, how they're first to share, or you notice they line up all their cars in a row, or you notice when they clean up, or if they clean up. That's two different observations. But if they clean up, does everything have to be in the right spot? And do they get upset if everything's not exactly right? Those are all hard wirings. Those are our personality. Those are the things that we pay attention to, because that's what God is giving us a peek into who they will be. Now, Carla, when I ask people, so tell me about yourself, they immediately tell me about what they do. I'm a mother of 5. I'm an author. I'm a podcaster. You're executive director. I'm a woman. All the things. I work this job, I do that. That's not who you are. That's what you do. And we want our children, and we want to show our children that God has hardwired them with different strengths and gifts and talents. And you'll have a baby that's very passive, and you'll think, man, I'm a great parent. They came home, they don't cry a lot, they're just kind of chill. I'm not saying that's not your parenting style, but it's probably not your parenting style. It's probably their nature. Kind of take it easy, laid back. Or you'll have other children that scream all the time, or they have meltdowns in the grocery store because you didn't buy them the bag of chips. Or let's move to middle school and you put them to bed happy, said their prayers and had great conversation, and they wake up the next morning and you've made their favorite breakfast, and they look at you and they're like, I don't like that. And you're like, no, this is your favorite. I made your favorite because I wanted to be nice to you. I don't like that. I don't want that. And then you get mad and angry. Well, your children are hardwired to give love and to receive love. They're hardwired for this introverted, extroverted. They're hardwired to be feelers or sensing or thinkers or perceivers. And so I talk in the book, and I know I'll come back to the character and personality, but in the personality part, it's so fun. Because when you've walked through the elementary and the middle and you start hitting these teen years, that's where all of what you've seen, you've paid attention to, I hope, or you can think back to, who's more likely to give one of the other siblings a shove when they interrupt them? Or who's more likely to say, come on in? They're your includers. They're your drivers. So I talk specifically about 3 assessments or things that you need to be looking at. And that is the 5 love languages by Dr. Gary Chapman. How do your children give and receive love? Your child may run up to you and give you a hug. Oh, I love you. I love you. Or they may go to the kitchen and unload the dishwasher. Or they may come home from the Dollar Tree and they've picked up something for you that they thought you might use. It wasn't in their budget. It was $1. Or they might just come and sit with you for no reason, not because you asked them. Because in the 5 love languages, there's quality time. They don't need you to talk to them. They just want you around. Words of affirmation, they're the ones that are saying, oh, that was a great job. I noticed how meticulous you were. I noticed. They want to be seen for who they are. The specific character and details that you see, I saw that kind act when no one was looking. And then the gifts of, I just randomly gave you a gift to say, I love you. It doesn't have to be expensive. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. It's just something that they think you might like. And then, so you have words of affirmation, quality time, gift giving, and then works of service. The one that'll go vacuum the floor just because the floor's dirty. And that's their way of saying, I love you. I encourage you to get that on Audible or Kindle or get the book and start, if you haven't already, start to understand, how do you give and receive love? What makes you feel loved? Does having your child come sit next to you just because, does that irritate you or does that make you feel loved? Some people, it makes them uncomfortable if people are just kind of hovering, but that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with that. But I really invite you to understand how you give and receive love, and then how does your child give and receive love? And the reason I say that is, I know that for instance, one of my children, I know all they want is for me to be around them and not ask them questions. And when I'm around them, I want to ask questions because I want to get to the heart of the matter. I want to find out how you're doing, what's going on. I had to learn not to do that. That the fastest way to get them to be quiet was for me to be around them and start entering their space without their permission. And I had to also realize that if I gave gifts to some of my children, it would never be used or touched or thrown away. And I had to learn not to get my feelings hurt. It didn't mean, it could mean, but it didn't necessarily mean they were ungrateful or that they didn't like the gift. It may just mean if I'm trying to show you I love you and I come home from a trip and I have a gift for you, I want to give it to the child that I know they're going to be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you brought me that t-shirt that says I went to the zoo, and I know that's a juvenile example, but I think that gives you a picture. Or if I go in their room and I've noticed that they've been busy and I'll go in and I'll pick it up. Or I'll take the sheets off and I'll throw them in the washer when they're capable, but I'll do it. And then I'll just put clean, fresh sheets back on their bed. Maybe with a note that says, I know you're busy. I wanted you to know I love you. To that child, that acts of service fills the core need they have. Does that make sense?
It does.
So I could give examples all day long. But the other is the Myers-Briggs. And that's an assessment. It is one that I highly recommend, but I don't recommend it if your children don't have a good vocabulary, or they're rather timid and afraid to answer questions on a timed basis, because they're not going to give you an accurate read. But what you could do is take it for yourself and become familiar with the different personality traits of like an introvert, extrovert. A shy introvert doesn't mean they can't go to a party and be the life of the party. It just means that's not where they're going to get their energy. They're going to go spend all their energy to be personable, and then they're going to go home and need to be alone. They're not going to want to come home and then tell you all about their night. They gave it all away. They need time to refresh and recharge. And the thinking, feeling, the intuitive, all of those. And I want to give you a caution. And I do this even now. I don't want to label people. Oh, you're an extrovert. Oh, you're a sensitive person. Oh, you're a thinker. You judge people. No. Those are peeks into how the Lord has wired us so that we can better communicate to the people that we love and the people that we work with. It's not for us to say, well, I'm a shy introvert, so I'm not going to go to the party. We don't want to label. They're tools, just like everything we've talked about these last 5 weeks. Tools that are used skillfully cultivate a rich relationship that will span long past childhood. When the children have moved out and they see you because they want to, not because you're a duty or a checklist. I know sometimes when our kids are in that transitioning period, and mine have felt like, we got to do this or mom will be mad. I don't want my kids to do something because mom will be mad or my feelings will hurt. If they are aware that my feelings might be hurt, that's not a bad reason to do something. It shows that they love me enough to do something that maybe they wouldn't do because they love me. So there's this whole dynamic. And then the third, so that's the Myers-Briggs. And it's just a simple assessment. And you can read about it. My family all did this when they got older teenagers. And we laugh about it. Oh, you're a this. And we're not labeling, but it helps us when we have to have a hard conversation know the best way. Because there's a way that shuts people down, and then there's a way that makes them open up. And then it's Strength Finders. Now, Strength Finders is through the Gallup organization. It's Clifton Strengths. But again, that would be for mom and dad or caregivers. What I recommend if you have a child aged 10 to 14 is Strengths Quest. And the reason I recommend that is that's not quite as complicated. The vocabulary, the analogies are not as, I'd say, mature as older teens would be and college kids, adults. But the Strengths Explorer it's more for their level, so that a child who is chatty, they just talk all the time. And sometimes your ears get tired of listening. And when they go through that, it's very easy, but it helps you understand the best way to communicate to them is to grab yourself a cup of coffee or water, sit down, and just let them talk, because they love to talk. It's how they process the world around them. It's how they process their feelings. And your thinkers are the ones that they're going to keep everything inside. And you're going to ask them, how you doing? Fine. How was your day? Good. And you're like, I'm trying to talk to them, but they won't talk to me. They have to think about it. for a while. And we have to go to them and say, I know you need to think about something that's going on. I can see it. Just let me know if you want to share with me or if I can pray for you over something, because I'm here for you. Remember, availability. They want to know we're protecting them from the elements, from the hidden dangers. They want to know that we are strong. We can handle it. Their little meltdowns, that we're strong enough. We can handle it. We're not going to be knocked over. We're not going to bend. We might bend a little, but we're not going to break. And so I do recommend those three. And the reason that those are so important is because that gives you a better leg and a better opportunity. So when you do communicate, your words land where they need to land, and they're receptive and they're received with love and understanding. And character is the one thing that we form. In the book I talk about we shape and form, mold and fashion our children. Perseverance, diligence, all the character qualities, honesty, trustworthiness, a strong work ethic, being fair, caring for others, having compassion and empathy. All the list of character qualities that we teach, and we kind of bake those into our children from the time they're little. But when our kids are older, that character starts to reveal itself. And, you referenced the book in the very beginning. And I said, again, just to remind you, your children are a masterpiece. They're not paint by numbers. You can't go get the paint color from the box and say, okay, number 3, I got to use yellow. Okay, and I'll just use yellow. No. Every masterpiece is an original, and every child is an original. And sometimes you might start off with the wrong paint swath or paint hues. Sometimes you might grab the wrong paintbrushes. Or sometimes you may think, I'm just going to use 2 paintbrushes. And you realize, oh, there's more detail than that. And so as we teach God's truth, teach God's character, because God is a God of character. God is always with us. He's always present. There's nothing we do that isn't seen or known by God. And our kids need to know that as well. But as you're raising them and you step back and you see there's some gaps. This spot right here, it needs to be more predominant. Maybe my child is doing some things, running with some people. Maybe I need to go in there and do a little bit more explanation. And as we kind of think about this closing, your children are living in a very dangerous, tough culture. It's a culture that is changing, and I'm going to say declining rapidly. Their friends may be their friends today until they stop being their friend tomorrow. The group that they hung out with, they may fit in with until they say a word, and now all of a sudden they're banned from that group of friends. And as a parent, you're the strong, you're the strength. Your source comes from the Lord. You have to remind your children, this is a season that God does not expect them to know how to handle all the cares of life at 11 or 14 or 17 or even 20. God doesn't expect that. I want you to get this picture of generational living where our children don't have to come and ask us, hey, how do I fix this tire? How do I do these adulting things that are rather difficult? But they ask you because they know you're not going to make fun of them, say, you should have known how to do that. Google it. There's such a short window of time. And I don't know if I've shared with you this before, but I was talking on this topic. And your children don't remember much from age 0 to 3. It's important. They're taking in your touch and the smell and your gentleness and your voice. They're hearing all of that. And are their needs met when they scream and holler because they're hungry? Does their diaper get changed? Your children are taking all those cues of sensory and satisfaction in during those 3 years, but they're not really remembering. They're not going to remember that time you were an hour late on feeding them. And then the 15, 16, 17, 18, your children are working, they're experiencing more freedom. They need less mommy and daddy, and they need more friend time, and they need to be more out there pursuing that freedom and finding their way in the world. And they're working, and they have less time with you. So if you really look at it, you have between 4 and 14 to really form and shape and mold. Yeah. And then that 15 to 19-ish, that's when they're putting into practice. That's when
everything they've learned.
Everything they've learned. All those words you've told them. Don't go play in the street. A car might hit you. Don't go hang out with that group. I don't think that's a good group. How do you be a friend? We talked about that. How to find a friend, how to be a friend, how to keep a trust when you need to say something. All of that is in there. And as parents, we move to that guide, that coach, and then the cheerleader. Because we're not as engaged in the daily decision-making process. But if they know that we're there, that we're reliable, that we're consistent, that we care, they'll come back and ask. But I do want to say this. If they don't get angry. Don't feel hurt or betrayed. Don't think they don't love you. Some children have a stronger propensity to just forge ahead, going to those are the drivers. Those are the ones that, they may hit a pothole here or there, but they're going to drive. They've got places to go and things to accomplish. It doesn't mean you didn't do your job. Always let them know you love them, you're available, you're there for them, and you're cheering them on. But more importantly, always let them know you're praying for them and that you believe in them because they have been taught well, and remind them of that.
And you will keep their heart.
And you will keep their heart.
And you will keep their heart. You were talking about the 4 to 14. That's really not a whole lot of time. It's a very short amount of time.
No, if you do 365 times 10, it's a lot of, meals, snacks, grocery shopping, science projects, arguments, dreams shared with you, hopes, fears. But that window doesn't last long.
Right. It's a short window.
And, mine are all older, and I'll still hear some of their dreams, but I don't hear them all anymore. And as your children move out, your influence is still great. And if you've really worked through the hard parts, the bumpy roads, the river, the rough rivers, the poor decisions, and they know that you love them unconditionally, there's always an opportunity for them to come back and say, maybe they need to say, I'm sorry. Maybe they just need to say thank you. But I really want you to know, and I want your heart to not wrestle with if they don't. All you can do is right now, today, make changes you need to make. Go back. If you have the opportunity, go back and watch some of the other lessons. Yes. Read the book. Read other books. Ask the Lord to reveal areas in your life that you could change and you can adjust so that you can love them better. Because like we started, our children need us to be They need us to love them for who they are, not who we wish they would be. That doesn't mean we stop hoping that if they're in a bad place, they make changes. And our children need things from us. Carla, they never stop needing that. And we'll never get it right. As a parent, you'll never get it right. Even when your kids get older, you might say the wrong thing. You might lecture them. You might do all the things I said, don't do those. And you might be doing everything that I said, do this, do this, do this, do this. In either place, you may be thinking, this isn't working out. God isn't finished writing the story. Not of your child's life, not of your life, and not of your relationship.
And he knows what's around the bend. He knows what's around the bend. Connie, thank you so much. This has been such a delight, a blessing, and a pleasure to be with you. And we just so appreciate you taking the time to be with us. And we thank each and every one of you who have taken the time to join us these last 6 weeks. We pray this has been an encouragement and a blessing to each and every one of you. We did video record all of these, and they will be made available. Once the editing is done, we will have the series up and online, and you'll be getting an email with all that information so that you can go back and watch. Last piece of advice you'd like to give, or just word of wisdom that you'd like to give before we close?
I always sign the book, Your Children is a Masterpiece in the Making. They're not paint by numbers. God's the architect, so you have to consult him. And the season of middle school and teen years, those can be some of your best years. Don't buy the lie that the teenage years have to be awful. They don't. There might be seasons, but that's all it has to be, is a season. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Connie.
It's been a delight for me to be able to be with you and to share with you and to be used of the Lord.
Thank you again, and God bless, and you will be getting an email on the series. Thank you.